The year is 1953. Charles Francis Richter, the creator of the Richter scale, was working in his room on a rainy day. On his desk, letters from all around the world had piled up. Everyone was asking Charles Richter questions to ease their concerns. The letters contained many predictions about earthquakes. Richter selected one of them and came across a question like this. There is a big alignment in the sky. 6 planets, the line. Throughout history, such natural events have inspired great admiration in people. Of course, it also became a source of fear. The total mass of the planets in the solar system is the mass of the Earth. So, is this gravitational force strong enough to trigger earthquakes? Scientists have been working for decades to find a connection between celestial alignments and seismic events. I will talk about some research shortly, but first, I want to draw attention to a natural phenomenon that we are all familiar with: tides. For example, we all know the gravitational pull of the moon, right? It pulls the seas, the oceans, and even everything on Earth towards itself. However, this gravitational force is so weak compared to the Earth that we only feel it through the immense rise and fall of water. I mean, with tides. Just like the moon, the sun also affects the tides. However, because the distance between the Earth and the sun is so great, this effect is even less than half of what the moon creates. The gravitational effect is much stronger during a full moon, because the Earth is moving between the sun and the moon. And this alignment occurs almost in a straight line. During a new moon, this time, the moon moves between the sun and the Earth, and again, there is an alignment in a straight line. In both cases, the gravitational pull of the sun adds to the gravitational pull of the moon, making the tides feel much stronger. Due to the effect of tides, ocean waters rise and fall, and this changes the pressure on shallow faults near the shore. In a paper published in 2004, it was concluded that tides can trigger earthquakes in shallow faults. According to the article, the pressure changes caused by tides can either reduce or increase the accumulated stress on these shallow faults. This can lead to the slipping of faults and consequently to earthquakes. These faults are generally very close to the surface, so they are more affected by the pressure changes caused by tides. So, tides occur not only in the seas but also on land. While the subsidence or uplift on continents is about a few centimeters, the oceans, this value can go up to 1 meter. So that's why we can only feel the effect in the seas, because the effect on land is very minimal. Therefore, it is emphasized that tides can only trigger small earthquakes. This 2018 study also concluded that lunar cycles cannot trigger major earthquakes. According to studies, in situations that create high tides like a full moon, this effect increases threefold. However, this still remains at a very small level. We can illustrate this like this: the occurrence of an earthquake at a specific place and time on a fault line. Although the probability varies by region, it is generally close to 1 in 1,000. Even when this probability increases threefold due to high tides, it still corresponds to a low rate of about 1 in 3,000. So, does the total gravitational force of all the planets increase this effect? According to research, even if all the planets are aligned, they can only create an effect as small as 2% of that of the moon. The biggest reason for this is the distances in between. Even the distance of Venus, which is considered the closest planet to Earth, is about 40 million kilometers. The distance from the moon to Earth is about 384,000 kilometers. So there is about a 100-fold difference in distance between them. The largest planet in the solar system, Jupiter, is about 1/300 times larger than Earth in volume. However, its attraction effect is also very little, because its closest distance to Earth is approximately 590 million kilometers. If it were as close to us as the planet Venus, we would feel this effect much more. So, what would happen if it were as close as the moon? It could disrupt Earth's orbit and climate, and even cause catastrophic disasters. How do we know this? On Jupiter's moons. Io is 420,000 kilometers from Jupiter, similar to Earth moon. About 420,000 kilometers. So it's almost as far as the distance from Earth to the moon. The internal structure of this moon generates strong frictional heat due to Jupiter's gravitational effect. This heat constantly causes powerful volcanic eruptions on Io's surface. Seismologist Susan Hough studied about 200 earthquakes with a magnitude of 8 and above. Major earthquakes sometimes clustered together. While analyzing the data, she noticed that on some days, major earthquakes clustered together. However, She rearranged the earthquake dates randomly to test whether the observation was meaningful. So she wanted to see what kind of pattern would emerge by assigning random dates instead of the actual earthquake dates. She found that there was no difference between the patterns she obtained from these random dates and the patterns formed by the actual data. So, according to the result, there is no connection between the timing of the moon's cycles and major earthquakes. In an interview, Hough clearly states that this is a major earthquake myth. Look, the person saying this is not an ordinary individual. We're talking about a seismologist who works at the United States Geological Survey. To make it even clearer, she gives the following example. Random data can reveal significant signals. Just like when you flip a coin, sometimes you can get heads 5 times in a row. She says that there will be another major earthquake during a full moon or a waning gibbous moon, and this myth will resurface. Such coincidences can happen at certain intervals. For example, 6 days before the 1999 Marmara earthquake in Turkey, the moon passed between the Earth and the Sun. So a solar eclipse occurred. For years, there has been discussion about whether this situation triggers earthquakes. Sometimes there are historical coincidences. For example, there are 3 major earthquakes that occurred in Mexico in different years, but all on September 19th. September 19? In 1985, there was an earthquake with a magnitude of 8.1, followed by one of 7.1 on September 19, 2017, and another of 7.6 on September 19, 2022. So Mexicans wake up anxiously every September 19th, but none of these statistics are meaningful. We can make an analogy like this. Let's imagine a class of 36 children. In this class, there would be an average of 3 birthday parties every month, and probably a few kids would have their birthdays on the same day. So, just as we find a relationship between earthquakes and planetary alignments, we can find correlations in other areas as well. For example, if the football team you support loses money in the stock market every time they win a match, you can find a correlation between those two. Similarly, there are beliefs that earthquakes are related to hot weather. In fact, people commonly refer to this as earthquake weather. However, the Kahramanmaraş earthquakes, which were among the biggest disasters of the century that we experienced more recently, occurred in the coldest month of the year. There are definitely people around you who believe that major earthquakes happen at night. Because the 1999 Marmara earthquake and the Maraş earthquake on February 6th occurred during the night. Indeed, the impact created by these 2 earthquakes seems to foster the perception that major earthquakes always happen at night. However, the second earthquake in Maraş occurred during the day at 1:24 p.m. It had occurred. Many earthquakes, like the 2011 Van earthquake and the 2020 Izmir earthquakes, occurred during the daytime. The National Earthquake Information Center detects the location of about 20,000 earthquakes worldwide each year and around 55 earthquakes each day. So we know that there will be earthquakes in at least 55 different places tomorrow. So if you make some predictions, yours might also be accurate. There are some people in the public who claim to predict earthquakes by looking at planetary alignments. In fact, they are known as earthquake astrologers. But what's really interesting is not just the existence of such people, but the millions of people who believe in them. These kinds of beliefs always remind me of this: the human quest for meaning in the face of uncertainties. We want to believe in something, to hold on to it. We don't like uncertainties. That's why, no matter how much science advances, beliefs like this will continue to exist. Humanity will always be curious about the effects of great events in the sky on Earth, just as it has been in the past and will be in the future. Sooner or later, there will be more major earthquakes, after a full moon, or any other celestial event. And the question that was asked to Charles Richter 70 years ago will continue to be asked from now on.